So with that sense of, thank you, thank you, thank you. Melissa she's trying to decide between the Harlem Quartet and I think like a broadcasting career, so she's amazing. So with that sense, I wanted to give you a quick sense of public support in the arts because I want to talk about just quickly how that relates to the role that music plays in society. And unfortunately, when we look at the environment in which the Sphinx organization and orchestras and everyone operates in the United States in terms of public support, government support for the arts, I wanted to give just a sense of, if you do some comparisons with Western countries, such as in Europe. And Germany, which is a great example, they spend about $11 billion. They did in 2009 with arts and culture funding. And the city of Berlin spent about $680 million in terms of public support for the arts. In the US, through the NEA, spent $155 million. So of course, stark, especially when you compare it to an individual city. In addition, I think it's important just to look at, again, overall per capita spending of GDP, and not just Germany. And Germany is one of the highest in terms of Europe. Unfortunately, the United States is not 1%, not 1/10 of 1%, not 100th of 1%, but 0.005% of our GDP is spent on arts and culture. And what is interesting is that although there is this minimal public support in terms of the government's role, the role of music in society is huge. And whether it's young people starting out at an early age with classical music in cartoons or television shows, movie soundtracks, classical music surrounds young people every single day. And the fact that many of our most popular music celebrities, I just pulled up a couple of here, but when we're in classrooms, we talk to kids about basically almost any of their big idols. Most of them had classical training. And so Tupac Shakur and how he went to the Baltimore School for the Arts, or Boyd Tinsley, who's the African-American electric violinist in the Dave Matthews Band, and the list goes on and on. And so there is this tie-in to music and young people that exists. And music has had an incredible role in social movements, whether it be the civil rights movement, where they prepared marchers with battle hymns and other songs that express the core of the movement. As a matter of fact, the entire focus of the movement was inherent in just one song. We shall overcome. Martin Luther King grew up with a piano in the living room. Coretta Scott King graduated from Antioch with a degree in music education and NEC with degrees in voice and violin, which is where her and Martin actually met. And classical music played a pivotal role in their entire lives. As I mentioned earlier, Frederick Douglass, the great orator, statesman, freedom fighter, leading the abolitionist movement, played the violin, as well as his son and his grandson, Joseph Douglass, who was the first black violinist to tour nationally and internationally. Frederick Douglass stated that he believed all fully emancipated, civilized men should understand music. Cesar Chavez believed in the role of music in the struggle of the United Farm Workers, and they often incorporated songs, music, actually had a traveling theater group that traveled and performed at their weekly strike meetings. In the Civil War, music played an all-encompassing role, whether it be the primary motivator for recruitment or that almost every regiment had a drum and bugle corps. At the beginning of the war, it was estimated that 1 in 40 soldiers was a musician. They sang in the trenches, sang in the battlefield. Robert E. Lee stated that without music, there would be no army. The Civil War is actually known for producing more popular songs than any other war. The French Revolution, not just in America, the French Revolution, the revolutionary leaders of France viewed music as a powerful means through which to build public morale. Classical composers such as Gassec and Méhul were encouraged to write revolutionary songs. There were more than 1,000 written during the period. And of course, the most legendary of all of those, La Marseillaise, composed by Claude Rouget de Lille and inspired by Mozart's Piano Concerto, became very, very famous and recognizable to all. And of course remains their anthem. So in this environment, where music plays a critical role in social change and the evolution of our nation, despite limited public support, for little more than a decade, Sphinx has been at the forefront of the battle to build diversity in this important aspect of our society and of our young people. In this brief time, we've been able to have some impact of change in these first 10 years of ours. One of the key things that I can quickly pull out, there's of course more, but we have very limited time, is that in our first 10 years, we have seen with America's orchestras that there has basically been a doubling of the number of African Americans in those orchestras. And as we looked at them, every single orchestra that increased its membership of African Americans had a relationship with Sphinx. In other words, either that member was an alumni of Sphinx or a member of the Sphinx Symphony, or the orchestra was one of our orchestral partners. One of the other things to kind of just look at with some of the different programming, it basically before Sphinx was pretty much unheard of to hear solo performances of musicians of color, especially instrumentalists of color. Now it occurs 20 to 30 times a year through our partnerships with orchestras. There was simply no professional Black and Latino orchestra. We actually have 2 of them. But never in history was a Black and Latino orchestra on tour throughout the country. We now do that every year. It was very rare to hear classical music performed. We have over 2 million in audiences for the various programs that we have. Relatively few commissions, as we mentioned earlier with the Legacy Project. We have a major commission that we partner with 10 orchestras or more every single year. Sphinx alumni have gone on to graduate to every 10 top 10 music school. We had the first summer intensive training program. We've reached over 85,000 students and nearly 1.5 million in scholarship awards. So there is a track record with these 10 years, but the unfortunate thing is that this really is and can be merely only the beginning. And one of my fondest memories at Sphinx is when I was in Atlanta for a conference on Black philanthropy, which is a whole issue in and of itself. And Coretta Scott King was speaking. And the Sphinx artist you see here, Patrice Jackson, had the opportunity to perform before Mrs. King on stage. And the tears that I saw in her eyes and the words that she spoke to me after just will literally stay with me forever. And they remind me of the words of her husband, which to me resonated so strongly with the theme for this conference in terms of navigating change. And he said, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. And history will have to record that the greatest tragedy of this period was not the strident clamor of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And I would submit to all of you, this work that relates to diversity in the arts, diversity in classical music, matters. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you today, and I'd love to take some questions. Yes. Oh, yes. I would love to take questions. And also, I should add, too, that we have a few of our Sphinx team members here. If you guys could just stand quick, I won't introduce each of you, but I think someone's also just working with the quartet. But a few of our team members, and all of you know who really is doing all of the work that creates such an impact. So thank all of you guys. And